Welcome to Dateline SAU, your source for the latest news and sports from St. Ambrose University. I'm Terry Koob.
And I'm Lizzie Voss. Colleges and universities across the country are receiving federal aid to help ease students' financial stress during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act is different than previous federal programs.
About 95% was earmarked directly to Pell Grant students. The remainder was then sent out to non-Pell, and the grants were still determined by financial need. So I'm looking at every single request. An email went out with a link to a form where they could request the funds. They could also now authorize us to put the funds on their account if they had a balance or were restricted, which that typically wasn't an option last time. But we could go right out with an authorization form for them to add it to their bill.
The U.S. Department of Education allocated approximately $2.1 million to the university. Unlike the previous CARES Act, online and international students can now receive aid. If you are a student in need, you can fill out the Coronavirus Response and Relief Fund request form on the SAU website.
Unfortunately, the ongoing pandemic has put limits on what prospective SAU students and their parents are able to see during in-person visits. But by embracing technology, the university has found a new way to show off everything the school has to offer.
Prospective students and their families are able to be on campus. They follow all of our protocols in terms of getting their symptoms checked and masked, physical distance, and they are able to and have done some outdoors tours, not in the big groups that you traditionally see each year, but usually in family groups. We have not been able to go into the residence halls this year due to COVID protocols as well. And so that has prevented us from being able to do residence hall tours. Now prospective students can literally go to each residence hall and take a virtual tour versus on an on-campus visit where they might be able to see up to 3 residence halls.
SAU incorporated these virtual visits this spring to go along with on-campus visits. You can learn more about the virtual visits and what they offer at sau.edu.
The St. Ambrose Theatre Department is working on a play that will be performed before a live audience, something they have not been able to do during the pandemic. It is a student-directed play called Admissions. The award-winning drama is written by Joshua Harmon and will be directed by St. Ambrose student Erica Seabloom. The show focuses on struggles of the high school and college admissions process and attempts to diversify the student body. The cast is currently rehearsing in the Studio Theater, where the production will be staged. The show opens March 24th.
March marks the beginning of meteorological spring, a time when we see temperatures beginning to warm. With that, SAU Campus Security is offering students a few safety reminders. Make sure your vehicle is locked at all times, even if you'll only be gone for a few minutes, and be sure no valuables are left in plain sight. A few examples include backpacks, purses, and GPS units. Do not leave your keys inside the car, and do not leave your windows cracked or rolled down. When traveling on foot, always be mindful of your surroundings. Walk in lighted areas at night and in groups when possible. If you see any suspicious activity, use the Live Safe app to report it to security or call 911. Examples of suspicious activity include loitering in and around parking lots and building entrances, looking into car windows, or trying door handles. For more safety tips, search for crime prevention tips in your campus email.
The Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at St. Ambrose is hosting a traveling exhibit for Women's History Month. It's called Trailblazers and features impactful women from the world, region, and St. Ambrose. Each picture is accompanied by a visual and audio description. You can find it across campus throughout March. Next week, Trailblazers can be found in the Beehive.
The COVID-19 pandemic has put additional stress on members of the St. Ambrose community, especially student athletes. For varsity bowler Hannah Jaros, being a full-time student hasn't always been a priority. However, this year, she's found success in her academic studies.
Academically, I've never been the strongest academically, so in this past semester, I've made it on the dean's list for the first time.
Her bowling game has also improved. Jaros recently qualified for 2 all-tournament teams. The women's bowling team has a few more tournaments before regionals in April. Jaros is then set to graduate in May.
Coming up after a short break, the SAU dance and cheerleading teams prepare to host the NAIA National Championships later this month.
And the St. Ambrose soccer teams hit the field for some tough conference action.
David Meyer will be here with highlights and more coming up after this break.
On Dateline SAU.
We're more than a radio station. We're your neighbors, investing time in our community. We're mentors, guiding the next generation of broadcasters. We're supporters of veterans, partners with social service agencies, and investigators of history. We're dedicated sports fans. We're committed to the stories that make the Quad Cities unique. We are KALA Radio, 88.5 FM, 106.1 FM. Turn it on, turn it up.
The COVID-19 pandemic has rewritten the schedules for just about every sport at St. Ambrose. After playing 2 matches in October, the women's soccer team finally resumed action last month. On Saturday, they played host to Trinity International on a snowline field at the St. Vincent's Athletic Complex. No score late into the first half, and the Bees are on the attack, but there is not enough behind this shot, and the TIU keeper has an easy stop. Here's a better look in the second half. The Bees with another shot. And the Trojan keeper makes another save. A few minutes later, the Bees still on the attack. And Margaret Hamilton draws the foul in the box, and this one would be big. Morgan Wallen then steps up and drills the PK. And that's how this one would end. St. Ambrose winning 1-0. The defense and midfield played strong. Keeper Molly McLaughlin was credited with 2 saves in a game that featured just 11 shots between the two teams. The defense continued to shine on Wednesday as the Bees shut out St. Xavier 5-0. The Bees outshot their opponent 17-4 and had a 7-1 advantage in corner kicks. The men's team had a rough start. Just 7 minutes into the contest, Trinity International gets on the scoreboard and the Bees face an uphill climb. Then in the second half, Ricky Rudea ties things up at 1-1 with this shot in the 60th minute. Credit Daniel Reynoso with the assist. Both teams get some good looks in the final minute of regulation, but this one heads into overtime, tied at 1. But the Trojans would prevail, scoring a quick goal in the 98th minute, sending the Bees to a 2-1 defeat. It was a chippy contest throughout, as a total of 25 fouls were called between the two teams, and 5 cards were given out by the officials. It was a bad case of deja vu on Tuesday, as the Bees found themselves on the short end of another overtime contest. St. Xavier scored in the 106th minute in the second overtime period to hand the Bees a 3-2 loss. The St. Ambrose men are winless in 2 conference games, 1-2 overall. This past weekend was a successful one for the SAU Bowlers. Both the men's and women's team won the championships in the Cohawk Invitational in Cedar Rapids. The men edged out the top-ranked team in the nation, Wisconsin Whitewater, to claim the crown, and the women defeated highly ranked Mount Mercy to take the women's title. The St. Ambrose Junior varsity men also won their competition, while the JV women placed second. The St. Ambrose dance team won its 4th straight regional qualifier on Friday, serving as the event's host. It was their 5th title in the last 6 years, their 9th regional championship in the last 11 years. The win gives the Bees an automatic bid to the NAIA 2021 NAIA National Dance Championships March 12th and 13th, which will be held at St. Ambrose University. The cheerleading team also hosted a regional competition, earning runner-up honors. The squad will advance as a host team to the NAIA National Competitive Cheer Championships March 12th and 13th at SAU. The St. Ambrose men's basketball team missed out on its chance to qualify for the national tournament when 15th seeded Indiana South Bend upset number 1 seed Olivet Nazarene in the CCAC championship game Monday night. But the team did get good news. Senior John Kerr was named first team all-conference. Kerr led the Bees in both scoring and rebounding. It is the second time he's been named to the top squad. Kerr finished with 1,706 career points, 8 on SAU's all-time scoring list. Another senior, Michael Williams, was named to the second team. He was an honorable mention all-conference performer last season. Williams scored 1,080 points in his SAU career, 45th on the school's all-time list. On the women's side, Madeline Prestegard was named second team all-conference. Her sister Janie received honorable mention honors. The team was selected as the league's annual Champion of Character team. It's the third time in 4 years that SAU has received the honor. And that's it for sports this week. I'm David Meyer.
And that's all we have for you on this edition of Dateline SAU.
We'll be back next week with the latest news and sports from St. Ambrose University.
Remember to check out the SAU TV Facebook and Instagram pages for our newscasts, late-breaking news, and more.
You can also find news stories and videos on The Hive at sauthebuzz.com.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next week.